Daniel, hello.
Alex, hello.
How are you?
Okay, it's a weird night. I feel like we're a bit lighter on the screens today
We
because
yeah, yeah.
only 66%
One
of
of
us
us.
are back. I wanted to use that line.
Yeah, no, Adam is day to day,
Hmm.
not on the long term IR.
But he took
So
the morning skate, so
we
we're
can't
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
we can't accrue salary cap. So he's not on LTIR. He's just day to day for now.
Yeah,
We're
we're
not going to do hockey cards today. We're going to wait
for
for
Adam.
Sunday
Yes.
so we can do them together.
Maybe
Because
we'll
the
do two
more
packs
the
that day. I don't know.
maybe the more the merrier. Isn't that the saying?
Yeah.
We are going to start today's show off with there's been more Kyle Beach stuff. And not that I thought the story was necessarily over. Just from my perspective, it's difficult to read this stuff. And I don't want to sound I don't want to sound like I'm upset that we have to talk about it. I think we should very much talk about these things. And the first few topics of today's show aren't necessarily the easiest to talk about, but there's been some more developments. Um, I'm not sure, Daniel, if you saw the Hall of Fame induction.
I did, yeah.
Gary Bettman did speak there, and I want to talk about that for a second just after this. This is from Rick Westhead, obviously. The quote is, "I'm tired of stalling." Hours after NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman said the NHL is grateful to Kyle Beach, Beach's lawyer emailed the NHL Commissioner this morning asking him to personally mediate settlement talks between Beach and the Chicago Blackhawks. To be clear, the request made by Beach's lawyer is for Bettman to oversee non-binding mediation. This would not be a situation where the NHL commissioner would have the final word, which is, I think, something we talked about last episode or 2 episodes ago, where the NHL wouldn't do anything for John Doe 2 and would leave it to the Blackhawks to deal with. And I was quite vocal. I mean, we were all quite vocal about that. I feel like, again, it's the same situation, and we have an update. This was 8 hours ago, again, from Rick Westhead, that Bettman won't get involved as a mediator in settlement talks between Beach and the Chicago Blackhawks. And the quote is, "We respectfully decline your request to participate in the mediation."
Yeah, it's another thing where we've mentioned looking at the speech, doing all the PR words that he could come up with, that I guess his speechwriter could come up with, that they acknowledge that what the situation is, how the case is going, but they will not play an active part in wanting to do anything about it. Just saying, like what we said before, like they rinse their hands of any responsibility you can have in this case. And again, like we've said it like how many times the last 3-4 weeks, like I'm not surprised that this is going on. And it is a weird thing to me because what we've said before, it's like it's a collective thing of the league. It's something that it is what you said. It's one of the top markets. It is something that is, pretty widespread. Like a lot of other sports leagues are speaking about it. And yet the NHL still is, in a way, having that stubborn approach to it, where it's like things are so insular and they just kind of think that, okay, well, we're not going to talk about this. Let Chicago deal with it and let's keep moving forward. But it's not the same. It's not as, business as usual.
Right. And I think to me, it feels like a lack of understanding that the NHL and the Blackhawks are one thing. They're not two separate things where if something happens to the Blackhawks, that it doesn't directly or it will indirectly affect the NHL. While, yes, it is one team, at the end of the day, because of what we know and because of the issues we've seen in the past with hockey culture, because this became so public, and the NHL really, in my opinion, didn't do a great job at, number one, handling it when it first happened, or what the Blackhawks did not handle it well when it first happened. And they didn't handle it well this time around either. How you don't understand that these two things are connected. You're so focused on the fact that, we as the league don't want to take responsibility for this, or we as the league don't want to deal with this, kind of like what you were saying there, Daniel, that we're just going to let the Blackhawks deal with it and say, well, all the headlines are going to say the Blackhawks. No, all the headlines are going to say the NHL's Chicago Blackhawks, right? They're combined.
Yeah. Two things that come up for me right now is something I remember, and this is still an ongoing investigation as well, something that hasn't been mediated between Akeem Alou and the NHL. I remember a professor I spoke to when I did my project on hockey culture last year, Professor Stacey Lorenz, out west in the University of Alberta, where he said like there was a key thing that he also mentioned here, and it's something that I've mentioned already as like business as usual, is when Brad Treveling, the GM of the Calgary Flames, mentioned everything that was going on with Bill Peters and how he he resigned as coach, or was fired as coach. And the one key thing he said that in that speech was, it's about getting back to hockey now. We could put this in the past and let's get back to hockey. And the second thing I have with that is, for the way this case has become as such a high profile case, is I think this was the NHL's opportunity. This was the opportunity, like other sports have done, to kind of show this is what we're going to do collectively as a league. This is to show that we have zero tolerance for abuse like this. Right. And what we're seeing now is, okay, yeah, you're sidestepping, you're letting the Blackhawks deal with this on their own. But what about all the other cases that are coming up now? What are you going to do to that? Are you just going to also sidestep that and say, okay, those teams are on their own? And it's like they're addressing like, we don't have a problem, but there is clearly a problem there.
Yeah, there is a problem. And you brought up the Akeem Alou stuff, the Akeem Alou situation and the lack of response from the league and seemingly blatant lies that they're saying in a press conference where Daly and Bettman are saying that this investigation is done. And Alou's representatives are saying, well, we haven't heard from the league. And you say this, I agree with you that this was an opportunity for the league to take a stand and truly cement what they want hockey culture to be, not just in the NHL, but as a whole. I actually think their first opportunity in recent memory was the Akeem Alou situation. When Akeem Alou went public on Twitter about the Bill Peters stuff and stuff that came out after that, that was their opportunity where they could have dealt with it. They could have fixed it, just done things to properly fix the issues that we see. Instead, they take, the lawyer approach where kind of just shoving this stuff under the rug. And now they're in a situation where not only is it public, but one of their teams are being taken to court. And I know this was a situation that happened 10 years ago, but they didn't do anything in 2019. And they're not doing anything now. To me, I don't know what they're doing to make a change, not in hockey culture, but hockey as the game.
Yeah, which is something that we've mentioned before, also in the summer, where it's just another example of the NHL just, for us as fans, as, audiences, you want the sport to grow. Right. And it's obviously not the case when these things happen, when you clearly shows that when their opportunities are given for the league to be more inclusive, it's like they're lagging behind from the other leagues. They're lagging behind from what's supposed to be said. Like I always talk about what happened during the summer when the whole thing with the Black Lives Matter and with George Floyd, and the NHL was the only league to not cancel their game. Like they eventually did it, but they did it a day after.
It felt like they really had to you had to really twist their arm to do anything, unless certain people speak up. And by certain people, it's a matter of, okay, is it sponsors or anything along the lines of that affects their profits? They're not going to do anything.
Yeah, I have a hot take right now.
I want to hear it.
And when I think about this, I just think the growth of the game. And I think it's something that there's so much emphasis, and maybe it's not just the NHL, but it's just certain things that we see in media when it comes to hockey. Like, I just feel like sometimes there's more emphasis on things like hometown hockey, where, yeah, great. Like, you give other places an opportunity to have NHL teams there, but that's not growing the game. That's the same fan base. That's the same like communities that have, already been sold on hockey.
Right. You're trying. Yeah.
It's just certain things like that where it's like, okay, well, we'll try to do these types of things that, you bring it, you want to bring in more people, like, but there's no new awareness there. I think that there's these situations that, especially when they're the most severe like this, when there's people affected in negative ways like this, that this is when hockey could really kind of show that, we are more progressive, we're going to be more transparent, and we want this game to grow.
Exactly. Like the hometown hockey as an idea is great. But when you have situations like these, or it's just, to me, I think it deters people, maybe not necessarily from a fan base point of view, but I think it deters people from playing. Mm-hmm. Parents wanting to send their kids out to play hockey. And it's not just a problem. Like, this was a problem before 2021, right? There was a whole issue with the concussions. And I believe football also had a similar issue where the head hits were just deterring parents from sending their kids. Like, I mean, I don't necessarily think, if I knew that my kid was going to get concussion after concussion, and not only that, but not be dealt with properly, I don't know how likely I am to push him to do that, because that's life-changing damage.
Or yeah, like right now, none of us have kids, right. But I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, when we do have children in the future, it's just what I think about as well, where if things are not being talked about, even at their most severe, even at their most high profile, where it's just so prevalent right now in the media, then like, it's just the other things too. Just like, would I want to bring my kid in there into a locker room, into, the possibility, and as me as not, a non-Caucasian person, like, put that kid in that situation.
Right. No, that's fair. And I think it's something that the NHL has to look at, and they have to understand that just because it doesn't affect their league, it seems to me they don't understand that they need to grow at this point. They need to grow the game, not the league. I think the league is at a semi-sustainable level, at least. Like, yes, there's plenty of teams who don't make money, but they're at a point where they need to grow the game just the way that multiple other leagues have done, the way that soccer leagues have done, the way that basketball, the NBA has done. We've talked about that before too, right? They're just kind of lingering around. We need to grow the league. It's like, no, that you're missing it. You're missing it. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the Kyle Beach conversation before we move on?
Just, I really hope things get resolved. I hope everything's okay. It's just, I don't know, just a lot of things going on right now between the league, between the Blackhawks, and I don't know. It's just, we've said it before, where these are important topics we have to speak about. It's just sometimes it could get overwhelming with the amount of updates are coming up, or just the response from the league. Sometimes I don't know. Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it perfectly. Again, we're going to keep talking about it, because I personally, and I think you would agree as well, these stories are very important. And as Rick Westhead, as Katie Strang, and others continue to report on it, I think we should keep talking about it. From one organization to another, the Pittsburgh Penguins, not necessarily, if you want to comment on it, was just more of an update on the Aaron Scaldi and I forgot his name, sorry, and Clark Donatelli. So this was from Katie Strang that ex-AHL coach Clark Donatelli was indicted in Rhode Island on 4 counts of sexual assault. This was an update from the last story that we talked about, which was that they had settled. They didn't use the word settled, but they came to a resolution, is the quote that I had found multiple times. This is just an update on this specific situation. Anything to add, Daniel?
Yeah, I think it's just going to probably bleed into what we're going to speak about next. But right. I think this is something that we were looking for, that there were going to be more updates regarding this, because when it just was that one tweet about they reached a resolution, right. I really didn't want to leave it there. I wanted to know more of the details. I wanted to really actually see like, okay, what's behind this? Yeah.
No, again, same here. I wonder more, like, again, what more is there? Because that investigation did end quite quickly, right?
Yeah, it did.
That the Safe Sport investigation on Bill Guerin, I believe it was about 5 days. And then not even a week or two later, they had come to a resolution, and maybe there is more to come here, but we don't know at this point. But sticking with the Pittsburgh Penguins, there is a bit of news that kind of came out of nowhere earlier this week, I believe from the Wall Street Journal, saying that the Pittsburgh Penguins could be sold to Fenway Sports Group, who obviously own the Boston Red Sox as well as Liverpool Football Club. This kind of came out of nowhere. I saw the sale could be around $900 million. Now, it's not confirmed, but it's looking likely. And just some things, Mario Lemieux will seemingly stay on as a minority owner. He will be involved, which, like, I would say that's a good thing. Would you also agree with that?
I remember Adam before mentioned how the reputation of Mario Lemieux, not saying the player Mario Lemieux, but I'm talking about the owner Mario Lemieux, was a bit tarnished when he tried to do this before, where he tried to sell the team. And it's just interesting where there was so much uproar when that happened. And then this just came out of nowhere, just slowly. It's like, yeah, these are the details. Mario's still going to be a minority stake owner, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to me, he seems not, maybe I would say, loved in Pittsburgh, because he's up there in terms of the legends of all time in hockey.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine, looking back at the situations that he's had to deal with. The biggest one in recent memory was Evgeny Malkin. A couple of years or 3 years ago, I remember there was the potential rift between Malkin and Kessel. And I remember the quote went along the lines of, it's either me or him. I mean, I'm quite sure who I picked. They did pick Evgeny Malkin. The one thing I was really curious. So there was something that I read about this specific group, and I'm curious your take on what that means for the Pittsburgh Penguins, but they're willing to spend money at the beginning. Now, they did that with Liverpool. They didn't spend it necessarily on big names when they bought the players at the time, but look at what they did with, like, Liverpool as an example. They won a Premier League. They won the Champions League. They're still a consistently good team. I wonder how that affects moving forward for Pittsburgh, because we're getting to a point where Letang and Malkin are up at the end of this year. They're not young. Crosby, he'll be up in 2 or 3 years. He's also not young. We're getting to the back end of this. Let's call it a dynasty.
The core.
The core, yeah. I wonder what that means of, are they going to go through a traditional rebuild, or are they more likely to buy their way out of a rebuild?
Um, okay, where they are right now, and I forget the specific figures of when they were first sold to Maryland Mew, but I remember it was minuscule compared to what they are now at 900 million.
Yeah, I believe it was about 85 million last I checked.
Yeah, because I remember and I only know this from okay, so this is a random thing, but I used to buy a lot of used like books on like just old hockey teams. I'm like, I was never around for a lot of these teams, or I didn't know what was going on when I was a kid. Yeah. And I remember when like the Penguins were at a point where they had to sell prime Yager for basically nothing. Yeah. And I think they're at a point now where I think their rebuild is going to be a retool. It's going to be, we're going to add pieces around Crosby, Malkin as much as we can. But I don't think they're going to bank on, like, they will probably get it, but they're not going to always bank on the first overall pick. They're going to try to do something where they've done before. And it just, maybe we'll just get through free agency. Maybe we're going to keep adding guys, but I think it's going to be similar to the Rangers where they're probably going to tell the fans that, yeah, we may intend to rebuild, but it's not going to be like Arizona Coyotes rebuild, or it's not going to be something where the Edmonton Oilers. I think that they've reached a point where they're borderline big market status that, there's so many fans that they don't know beyond Sidney Crosby. They don't know past Sidney Crosby. They don't understand like how this team was before Sidney Crosby, like Marc-Andre Fleury, Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah.
It's just something where I've mentioned, like, it's not going to be like a Nashville status because Nashville is a much smaller market where they have to stay relatively competitive to keep the fans coming. Right. But I think with Pittsburgh, it's just they were sold to this idea of success already that it's not going to be traditional. Like they have to spend.
The only thing I will say though is the with the Rangers, they did get the first and second overall pick. Mm-hmm. Now they're maybe those two players in particular down the line will have a much bigger impact on the team. Obviously at the moment, unfortunately not so much. Like, listen, these guys are what, 20, 21 years old, Lafreniere and Kakko. There's plenty of time for them to develop. Like, look at Jack Hughes, right? He came out, wasn't spectacular. And I think obviously now he's unfortunately injured, but he had such a good start to the season. Anything could really happen. That's the only thing I'd have to say with the comparison you made to the Rangers. But I think you're exactly right. Like, I don't necessarily think it's going to be like it was the first time around for this core where they drafted Crosby, Malkin, and Fleury all high up there.
Mm-hmm. The only Letang was the exception. He was a third round pick.
Right. Like and the way they filled the core was Gensel. Gensel wasn't a top pick.
He was a third round pick.
He was
a third round pick. Yeah. 2012, I believe.
Okay. I trust you.
But he was like an NCAA guy. So, you never know with those guys, right? Like they dominate and then they come in.
They were able to fill around it with draft picks and bringing in guys. But I think this time around, personally, if it goes the way of how they did it with Liverpool, they're willing to bring in more guys than drafting them per se. Because I don't think they're going to be as patient with saying, okay, going through the rebuild, because it could be a longer rebuild, right? There's teams, some teams too in particular, they've been going through this for quite some time.
Yeah, I think that, it's going to be like when I mentioned the Rangers, it's going to be that mix of, we're going to get these top pick guys, but at the same time, we're going to swing for the fences and get an Artemi Panarin, or at the time, which doesn't look as good now, but a Jacob Trouba, where they're still going to try to bring in these types of guys to fill in the core, or even right now an Adam Fox. And we're going to have the young guys, they're going to develop along the way, but again, like we're still going to try to stay competitive.
Yeah. Anything else on the Penguins before we move on?
Just one thing is I'm pretty like I know that they're not at the best right now, but I'm still surprised by like their lack of depth, what they've been able to do.
Yeah. No, that's right. It's the most Pittsburgh thing ever, though, right? Like they just
Yeah.
bring in, I don't know. I couldn't pin what it is, but just the way their organization has run, they've never had an issue. Same with like Tampa Bay, bring in a guy and that you've developed, and he kind of just fits the way that you need him to fit. And it's really incredible the way that's how it's done
Mm-hmm.
there.
Is Evan Rodriguez a Leafs legend?
I mean, like, I guess we've named Leaf legends who never played for the Leafs. Like Carter Verhaeghe never technically
No.
played for the
Jared
Leafs, but
McCann.
Jared McCann, Leafs legend. So I guess, sure, he's technically a Leafs legend.
Okay.
If you want to name him, you are the director of legends.
I just
for this
remember
podcast.
when they lined up against the Leafs. I just
Yeah.
remember like Kasperi Kapanen and Evan Rodriguez were on the first line against Toronto.
Yeah.
Like, that's
That
weird.
was loads of fun. That game was loads of fun. I mean, we talked about it. I don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
One last, I will call it negative thing for the podcast. Ottawa has had their next 3 games postponed. They have 10 players in COVID protocol. I believe Dreger reported literally a couple hours ago on Insider Trading that some of them are symptomatic, like they actually have symptoms. So obviously, hope they are okay. They've already put the one game is postponed. I think it was New Jersey, and they have 2 more games. I don't want to make it about the Olympics, but everyone's been talking about this, connecting it to the Olympics. I don't necessarily think one team shutting down for 3 games is going to do it, because I think this was a very particular situation where even testing them every day didn't necessarily slow the spread. But it is potentially, I think it should be a wake-up call for the rest of the teams and players who want to go to the Olympics, that if this does happen, that it can jeopardize their chance of going to the Olympics, because the NHL and the IIHF, they're still talking. There's that January 10th deadline, but anytime before that, this thing can be cut. So I think it should be a wake-up call for those players.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like we wish them the best and hope everything's okay with the Senators, but it does definitely cause an impact of what things are going to look like internationally, and bring in certain players that, we know what team is going to be on a certain team. But again, like we already knew that there was going to be the risk there, especially when all these guys are coming from different cities, 2 different countries, whatnot. And I really definitely believe that they need to kind of clamp on this right now and try to just figure out a plan right now, because January 10th is coming close.
Yeah, man. Time is flying. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, time is flying. Like it's November 17th.
Yeah.
It feels like we just started, or for me, it feels like I just started the semester.
Yeah. My apologies for the pause. I had my phone ringing, but yeah, basically, when it comes to time, I don't know. It's just weird that we're thinking about the Olympics right now, when I still say to certain people when I'm walking around, like when people are like, oh, I think it's going to snow next weekend. And I would tell them, oh, summer is truly over.
Yeah, exactly. Summer is over. I mean, the weather has been so on and off.
Inconsistent.
But yeah, it's been inconsistent. One thing, so as I was digging about looking up this stuff for the Senators, I came across this article from Luke Fox Jukebox.
I love that.
But they were talking about this. So obviously the IIHF has a new president, which is Luke Tardif. And there's this proposal going around that they could also introduce 3-on-3 hockey into the Olympics. Now, this won't be anytime soon. They're saying it could happen in 2030. It won't happen in 2026. Like that's an absolute long shot. Now it would be a little bit different. I'm just looking here. It would be a narrower ice rink.
Are they trying to copy basketball right now? Because for FIBA, that's what they just did, 3-on-3 basketball. But thing is, there's actually some merit to it that apparently in a lot of other countries, 3-on-3 basketball is a lot more popular than we think it is in North America. But I don't know. It's kind of like okay, so like hypothetically, what would the players be? Because I know for basketball, it's not really the NBA players playing in the 3-on-3 for the Olympics. What would that be for hockey?
There's that. That's really, again, this is so early that I wanted to ask you what you thought about it, because I think you brought up basketball as an example, and I just think we've seen overtime, and 3-on-3 overtime with 5 minutes is incredible. Now I think the suggestion here is about half an hour. Or they
You guys gonna get gassed.
they are. But again, like it's a cool concept because we know how offensive 3-on-3 hockey can be. And I'm sure the coaches for these teams, if this were to happen, would probably make it a lot more defensive than we'd like. But with these guys becoming so much more skilled, I just think that it would be a really cool thing to see. And for like a country like Canada and even the United States or Russia, where their players, with Canada specifically, like there's so many players who won't make the Olympic team who are still so good. Like
Yeah, you kind of sold me on that. Yeah.
like imagine, I don't know. We'll use Nick Suzuki as an example. Let's see, because he's teetering on, he could make the Olympic team, he might not. Imagine Nick Suzuki on a 3-on-3 hockey team. Like, wouldn't that be exciting?
Yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Exactly. See, I don't know if it's going to happen, but I think it's a really exciting proposition. And if the NHL also sends its players there, that could be really cool.
I don't know why I'm just thinking of this right now. I know that it was more of a joke in 2016, but I think I just saw a recent post by a blog where they put projected Olympic team for Team North America. And that really like just made me think of 3-on-3, where I'm like, it'd be cool if they brought back Team North America for 3-on-3.
Was it under 25? That was the threshold.
Yeah. And I remember I told you I saw that meme before, because at the time Taylor Hall, I think, just turned 26.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they're like, Taylor Hall, you've been banished from the land of North America.
I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Yeah.
Since that tournament. It does not feel like 5 years.
That's when we still had hope for the Olympics. I remember that.
Yeah, no, that's true. We did a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. I remember low key when I went to the game, I really liked your Team Europe's jerseys.
They were nice. I
think something
they were
different.
Nice,
I actually got to see Marian Gaborik play, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. He just retired. We talked about it. Cool. Go back. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to that episode. I think it was last episode.
Yes, I gush over my childhood love for him. Like how he was one of my favorite players to never play for the Ducks or the Leafs.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Today's episode is brought to you by Stamps.com. Since 1998, Stamps.com has been an indispensable tool for nearly 1 million businesses. Stamps.com brings the services of the U.S. Postal Service and UPS shipping right to your computer. Whether you're an office sending invoices, a side hustle Etsy shop, or a full-blown warehouse shipping out orders, Stamps.com will make your life easier. All you need is a computer and a standard printer. No special supplies or equipment. Within minutes, you're up and running, printing official postage for any letter, any package, anywhere you want to send. And you'll get exclusive discounts on postage and shipping from USPS and UPS. Once your mail is ready, just schedule a pickup or drop it off. No traffic, no lines. Cut the confusion out of shipping. With Stamps.com's new Rate Advisor tool, you can compare shipping rates and timelines to easily find the best option. Save time and money with Stamps.com. There's no risk, and with promo code POD, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in POD. That's Stamps.com, promo code POD, POD, Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. I think it's time to finally talk about this. We didn't get to it last episode, but I've been dying to talk about this.
Okay.
John Tortorella comes out with a bit of a hot take, telling Connor McDavid to shut up, as he put it. I'm assuming you saw the clip.
I did, yeah.
So for anyone who has not seen the clip, John Tortorella pretty much says that Connor McDavid should change his game in a way. He specifically said he doesn't have to become a checker, which I thought was hilarious because how many discussions we had about John Tortorella trying to turn Patrick Laine into a power forward. But whatever. Because Connor McDavid has complained about calls against him or lack of calls against him. I don't agree with him. I personally don't agree with him. Like, do you agree with the idea that Connor McDavid should change as a player or become a little more aggressive, I guess? I think that's what he was kind of saying. To me, he's saying become more aggressive.
I think like not fundamentally change everything, but I think just the way the team is, like teams are built now, the way superstars are, you don't have to be like, what's an example of like a guy who scores? Like you don't have to be prime Getzlaf or Perry or prime like Shanahan to kind of like show that. I think that like Sidney Crosby, like even though people kind of ripped on him early in his career, like he was an aggressive guy. Like he was aggressive back to certain things, right? Like when teams got in his face, I remember when he was pushing Ovechkin, like them like shoving each other or something like that. I think that you need that certain level of standing up for yourself. But I don't know, Connor McDavid, it just, you have like Zach Cassian. I know he was injured, but you have certain guys that play that part for you. You don't have to change how you play.
Wayne Gretzky had Marty McSorley, and Connor McDavid has Zach Cassian.
Yeah. At one point, he had Zach Cassian and Milan Lucic.
Yeah, he did. You're right. For what, a year or two, a couple of years, he had both of them. The thing with what John Tortorella says, I think you brought up Sidney Crosby. I think Crosby is an interesting example because I think Crosby did change his game in a way. Like last night or a few nights ago, the guy literally threw a player into the boards. By the way, unpenalized and uncalled. I just think that might be a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of threw a player, like literally it looked like he threw the guy. But he did change in a way where he wasn't dealing with any crap. He was not dealing with it. And I think Connor McDavid did that in a way, maybe not same way Crosby did. Like, I don't remember. He's done it a couple times where his elbow's a little up there. Connor McDavid's elbow had been up there.
Yeah, he's done that before. Yeah.
Like, he's retaliated. Like the thing for me is like, did we miss Connor McDavid not complaining for the first 5 years of his career?
It happens. I mean, okay, so he's an example. Like LeBron always complains about it, but we're not asking him to change his game.
Right. Like, and for me, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm really not. I'm asking for the damn rule book to be called. I'm pleading. And if the rule book isn't good enough, you have off season to change it. Yeah. Like this isn't to me a different. Okay. Here's the thing. I see it as an issue. I think you see it as an issue as well. I say Adam sees it as an issue. I don't think the NHL sees it as an issue.
No, I don't think they do.
Because if they saw it as an issue, Gary Bettman wouldn't be saying, well, we have the best refs in the league or in the world. Sorry. We have the best refs in the world. You don't. Like, you don't. You don't. You don't have the worst. The worst are CONCACAF. The worst are CONCACAF refs. But that's a separate story. Just brutal refereeing.
We've seen so many examples of that, like Austin. Austin Matthews, he takes a fair share of his own hits as well on things. Things happen to him as well. And I'm not saying comparing them, he doesn't.
Be careful, Daniel. They will come.
I know. I'm not saying equal level kind of things, but I'm just
the Edmonton mob will come after you.
But there's been a lot of things on him as well that have been called.
For sure. And I think there's a lot of things every star player goes through. And in this league in particular, they do not care. They'd rather the star retaliate. Like, think about it like this. For me, and I think most people, I hate Brad Marchand, but I'd love to have him on my team.
Yeah.
Brad Marchand can put up points. But he's also not only a pain in the butt to play against, but he's a little bit of a rat. Mm-hmm. Get in your face. He might lick you. He might lick you and get away with it twice.
It's funny. I was going to say this, but I'm not going to put him in the same breath as the licking part, but I was going to say Brendan Gallagher as an example as well.
Yes, exactly.
I think Adam would agree with that as well.
Yeah, he is a pain in the ass to play against, and he's a little bit of a rat. And those are the guys who everybody hates but loves at the same time. And look at Ovechkin. I'm sure there's people out there who saw what Crosby did, and me included, who thought it was hilarious because he literally threw a player and didn't get called for it. He didn't get called for it. Is it just me who thinks that's ridiculous? A little bit ridiculous? We should not expect the stars of the game. Connor McDavid has had multiple 100-point seasons. He's he just hit 600 points in 425 or around there, 424 game. Is that right? Yeah. In 424 games. He hit 600 points in 424 games, but he's the guy who has to change his game.
I don't know. I mean, okay, I don't know, John Tortorella, where he's coming from is, when he talk about he has to change his game. Mm-hmm. I didn't think of Patrick Laine right away. I thought of Pierre-Luc Dubois, where just remember that back check shift.
I know it was not great.
That's an example where I was okay. Maybe that's a change. Not Connor McDavid.
I don't think John Tortorella is wrong. I just hate the fact that John Tortorella is wrong in this instance because he's right. If Connor McDavid wants to not be pushed around, I guess I don't know what Connor McDavid's what his problem is. But if he doesn't want to get pushed around, he also has to push back.
Yeah.
And that's stupid. To me, that if he's getting penalized, then call the damn penalty.
There's not slide. Pittsburgh, not Pittsburgh, Edmonton, they always have that option. They always put Zach Kassian back on the first line.
Please don't. No. I will stay. Right now, it is November 17th, 2021. They should never put Zach Kassian on that first line again. Never. I don't want to see it. You know how much I do not like Edmonton? How much crap I've talked about Edmonton on this podcast? I do not want them to put Zach Kassian because they have better players than that. I think that is this idea that Connor McDavid has to change is ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just I understand where he's coming from, but it's not like it's just happening to him. A lot of star players go through all of this.
Yeah, and all those star players have changed.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like that's why John Tortorella is technically right. Because all those guys, look at Ovechkin. I don't think Ovechkin's a guy who's going to take crap. I don't think Crosby's a guy who's going to take crap. I like list the stars. All the stars who are past their prime or towards the end of it will not take crap because they know that if they take it and they don't retaliate, they're going to take it more.
Yeah, and I think, okay, this is one aspect too. I think John Tortorella's emphasis on his own team culture. Mm-hmm. And I recall the 2004 finals with the Lightning and the Flames. And, you barely ever see fighting in the playoffs ever.
Yeah.
But he allowed Brad Richards and Vincent Lecavalier to fight. I remember Vincent Lecavalier had a really, really, violent fight with Jerome McGinley. And I think there's just something he installs in his star players. Like, regardless of where you play on the lines, you're still going to be asked to defend yourself.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying he shouldn't defend himself. I'm just saying he should get the damn calls.
Yeah.
Like, Is that, be honest, is that too much to ask for?
It's not too much to ask for.
It's not too much to ask for. Can I read you this quote from, we know him, Tim Peel.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in the news before for
many
that
things.
For the mic situation, being mic'd up and that. He was on Kipper and Bourne talking about the hot mic incident. And this is the quote. You hear fans go, quote, just call the rule book. Well, that's not realistic. Let's be honest. What?
Yeah, I don't understand.
How is that? Can I why? I'm genuinely curious as to why that's not realistic. Because that doesn't make sense. Then maybe there's something wrong with the rule book.
I think it is outlined there. It's just, I don't know what it is. Like, is it just refs? Like, they're just, it's relative to these certain incidents. It's not like they just kind of call it for what it is. Because when Tim Peel said, like, he doesn't call PK Subban a dirty player, and PK just said, it's just a bad habit he has. But like, you can tell, like, they slow it down for us, and you see his leg. It just comes out like the last second.
Okay, sure. You know what? I don't know. Maybe and
I feel bad laughing at this because we really hope Sammy Blais is okay.
Yes, yeah, of course. Of course. He's out for this season.
Yeah, torn ACL.
Yeah. But that's ridiculous. Like, it's a bad habit. So that's what's the point? Like, what you're trying to get across with saying, okay, he's not a dirty player, but it's just a bad habit. Then change the bad habit.
Like, does Nazem Kadri just have a bad habit of getting suspended?
He has a bad habit of seeing the red mist way too much.
Yeah.
That's the bad habit there.
Oh my, the only thing, again, like, I don't like the bad habit thing we talked about. It's just the one more thing with Kadri, just with the Justin Falk thing where, it wasn't even near the puck.
No. That was just clearly not good. Like, it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah.
I don't understand why year after year after year, we have to have the conversation that the refs in our eyes aren't doing their job. And I think that's the biggest distinction, is that we see it as them not doing their job. Personally, I feel that maybe the rule book is too subjective, where each person sees it in a different light, or a group of people see it in one light and another group of refs see it in another light, and then the fans see it in a different light. If that's the case, that doesn't seem good for business.
Yeah, not at all. Because the way I see it is like that's the part that gets me. Is just
Right.
I talked to PK after. No, just call it for what it is. Don't talk to the guy and try to rationalize it, because it's the same thing where a guy gets penalized and then you know how he gets mad and he tries to talk to the ref. Say,
Yeah,
"Oh, it was like this." It's like, no, it's already called. Just call it for what you see.
exactly. Like it's mind boggling that year after year after year, we have the same conversation and we're the only ones still complaining. Like the NHL hasn't really done that. They said, oh, well, we're going to enforce cross checks this year. That lasted maybe a week
Yeah.
into the season. Like it maybe lasted a week. No one's talking about it because like we're just so used to the idea that the NHL says one thing and then kind of pisses it away a week after, which is again what happened. So can we deal with this? Like, can we deal with this
Just
situation?
yeah, again, like it's not difficult. Just call it for what it is.
Exactly. And I think the issue is that they need to go and look at the rule book because to me, that's the issue. It's the rule book.
These things like okay, when they talk about like oh, it was a bad habit. I think the two things that come up to me is yeah, I know that when you talk to a guy about like every game is going to be different, but you still have to call it for what it is. And second, it's like, this is not an 18, 19-year-old PK Subban. He knows what he was doing.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is a crazy comparison. I'm just going to make it anyways. And I'm not saying this is what I do, but I'm just using it as an example. When I'm driving, if I don't stop, if I do a rolling stop at a stop sign, I'm going to get a ticket if a cop sees me. Mm-hmm. He's not going to pull me over and say, oh, it was just a bad habit and let me go on with my damn day. He's going to give me a ticket for a rolling stop. I like, maybe I don't know how different that is, but I really think it's that simple. He's being penalized or he's committing a penalty and not being penalized. Not in PK Subban's case, because he was fined, but in the case of Connor McDavid, how many times that series against Winnipeg was atrocious. The amount of times he was penalized, and there were minimal calls. That's insane.
There has to be a level of consistency there. And must I say that in my area, that's actually a big problem with rolling stops. Like there are cops hiding at every side street that every time I'm driving home or going somewhere, there's always someone getting a ticket.
Yeah. When someone's speeding on the highway and a cop sees them, they don't not pull them over because they recognize the license plate and say, well, it was just a bad it's just a bad habit, guys. It's just a bad habit. What are you going to do?
This reminds me of a Simpsons joke where I think Homer's speeding.
Yeah.
And then Chief Wiggum, it's like, let him go, Lou. Someone going that fast doesn't have time for a ticket.
Oh, my God. Oh, brutal. Before we get to the last two things, I want to bring up the New York Islanders will be without Ryan Pulock for 4 to 6 weeks.
That's the one that kind of, because the Islanders are a bit bad right now. And Ryan Pulock's he's like a huge part of that team, right? Like we always talk about Adam Pelech and how he's developed into, okay, I'm going to take Dom Luszczyszyn's little nugget out of this.
Okay.
But he has become our generation's Mark-Edward Vlasic when it comes to the Team Canada outlook for things.
Yeah.
But
fair.
Like Ryan Pulock, I know he took a while to develop, but it's just been one of those Lou guys that is the main cog in there. And the way the Islanders have really kind of come out this year and really underperformed based on what we saw them the last 2 seasons. And, it's still early, but I think that's just going to be a huge loss for them.
I think for a team that relies on everybody, not just in scoring sense, but also in defense and defending, losing a guy like Ryan Pulock, I think is huge, even though the team is not having they're not having a great season at the moment. I know we're 13 games in and we're making huge judgments because I bet by the end of the season they're like the third spot in the Metro. I think that's what we all had, or somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, we had some there along
We
there.
all had them in making the playoffs.
We've learned from the last 2 years to not
Exactly.
undermine them.
I think right now what they're suffering from is a lack of scoring.
Which has always been kind of their thing.
It has, but like I think it's more now. Like I look at their lineup, I see Brock Nelson has 9 points in 13 games, 7 goals,
surprising.
in 13 games. Matthew Barzal, who has 8 points in 13 games. Personally, I would expect more. Anthony Beauvillier, 7 points in 13 games. I think kind of what you expect.
I don't know. That's kind of disappointing for me because,
Okay.
you know, he was finally given a bigger role with Jordan Eberle gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he was getting those minutes more. Like he was always a top 9 guy, but now they're actually letting him play in the top 6 consistently. And I expected more out of him, especially for the contract they gave him.
No, that's totally fair. I just think I don't expect him to be third in scoring per se.
Yeah.
I think it is my thing. And Josh Bailey, 6 points in 12 games. Palmieri, who they just gave a 3 or 4 year deal, 6 points in 13 games. I don't want to rush to conclusions. Just at the moment, they're really struggling, and we're getting to I think we're almost getting to the American Thanksgiving. And I know Friedman's thing is the teams in the playoffs, in a playoff position by American Thanksgiving, are usually going to be there by the end. And I look at the Metro and I see Carolina, Washington, and the New York Rangers as the top 3 there. And I don't necessarily see a team who won't be there. Like the one to me would be the Rangers, but I think they've started the season extremely well. Will they keep up a 719 points percentage? Probably not. Neither will the Hurricanes keep up an 850 points percentage. Mm-hmm. But I just think that there's a path ahead for them that is rough, that is difficult. But if there's a team that can deal with it, it's a team led by Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz.
Yeah, they're going to figure out something. And I always think Matt Barzal as like their lone offensive star that could get things going, because I always thought he was going to always be a point per game guy for them. But if they've shown anything from before, it's going to be one guy we don't expect to get really hot and help them.
That is probably
maybe Zach Parise. I don't know.
You know what? Zach Parise has 3 points in 13 games.
As long as he's healthy.
I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be that guy for them, unfortunately. Moving on from the Islanders, the Vancouver Canucks have been in the headlines for quite some time.
It's just bad.
They're not looking good. Last episode, we talked about how Merrick reported that Francesco Aquilini was going to be on the road trip. That was apparently planned, but still, at a time where they're not really performing, it's unfortunate that this is the road trip he was on. They are done the road trip. Can I tell you what happened on this road trip?
Okay.
So they lost 7-1 against the Colorado Avalanche. They lost 7-4 against the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And then a couple nights ago, they lost 5-1 against the Anaheim Ducks. And now they're back home. Their 3-game road trip, they scored 6 goals.
That's horrible. Oh man, like it just like the perfect time for this was Dom Luszczyszyn's article he wrote.
Yeah.
Today actually, and we've always talked about their roster. Like, there's no denying that they've drafted pretty well with the top picks, I guess, that they were given. And there were some highlights. Like, here's the one line I loved from that article is it all stems from poor player evaluation, creating an incredible combination of bringing in the right players at the wrong time. JT Miller and Connor Garland, the wrong players at the right time. Braden Holtby, and my personal favorite, the wrong players at the wrong time. And he includes Jay Beagle, Anton Roussel, Brandon Sutter, Oliver Ekman Larson, Tyler Myers, Eric Branson, Tucker Pullman, and Travis Halmanick. Oh, and he also says sometimes there are moves that don't pan out that might have been harder to predict at the time. Who was great for Boston but signed for too long? Louis Eriksson. And Nate Schmidt, whose deal was bad but played tough minutes on a contender.
Yeah, I think with Nate Schmidt, things just didn't work out. And I mean, go look at the Winnipeg Jets right now. I believe they're top of the Central. And
I think with Vancouver is, listen, like, they did certain things that to get rid of Louis Eriksson, like Anton Roussel, and be able to sign their restricted free agents, it was great. The only thing is, it reminds me of doing an assignment. And, every time you do a school assignment, us as great students, Alex, you and I, Adam and I, we always strive for an A+, right? But I feel with Jim Benning, it's just kind of like, okay, good enough. Let's just, like, by any means necessary, let's just get this thing done. Even if it affects like other things where he gets rid of the bad contracts, but he still gets Oliver Ekman Larson back. And then he gives up 2 first-round picks. Well, one really good first-round pick and then a second-round pick.
Yeah, it's just I didn't understand this obsession with OEL. Like I just he's taken steps back, and I think part of that is the Arizona effect, but I think he's also just taken steps back. I never understood the obsession with OEL. I thought it would make them a better team on paper, but that wouldn't, like, the salary cap exists. I know I complain all the time about how the salary cap constraint dominates a lot of our conversation.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. The reality is there's so many teams up against the cap. And when they made that deal, if they waited 1 year, not only would they not have OEL, but those contracts would be off the books.
Yeah, it was something where it's like, all right, how about you just preach patience and we'll keep on going? Because I think when they did make the playoffs, I think that just was a subtle sense of lightning in the bottle, because a lot of the key contributors are the guys that did leave and they didn't really replace them. And then you come into this season and instead of waiting, he still did some kind of move with the Oliver Ekman Larson thing to say like, okay, yeah, we'll still try to build a contender here. And what the team needs other than the patience is, we want the city to see a winner, but you don't know how to build a winner properly when I feel like, okay, Connor Garland was good. I know that was a solid pickup in that deal, but just with Oliver Ekman Larson, he's not the same player. And we said it before, the star players are not exactly like, Elias Pettersson. I don't know what's going on, but he's not performing. And then there's really no depth on this team. Like when we've mentioned last week, Matthew Highmore is one of those guys that you add into your depth players who you expect to contribute, or, Jason Dickinson, then there's a lot of concerns there.
It is, for me, it's concerning when the $7 million player in Elias Pettersson has the same amount of points and less goals than Niels Höglander. And I don't want to push down Elias Pettersson. I think he's a great player, but right now he's not performing. That might be a byproduct of the fact that the rest of the team also isn't performing, with the exception of 3 or 4 players who are they're not killing it. JT Miller is the only point per game player.
Mhm.
And I
And
think they're sorry, go ahead.
oh no, it's just the problem I have with that is just I think it just highlighted so much because of how top heavy they are in terms of production that when one guy is not working, you don't really have anybody to like, next man up in the bottom six to say, okay, well, we're going to kind of compensate for a guy that's not really doing well.
And I don't want to make it about the Leafs. I just think for me, it's a good example to make where it's similar situation with the Leafs, where in terms of offense, it is very top heavy, where if you remove John Tavares or you remove Austin Matthews or whoever, the next man up, because there's so much salary cap tied there, your next guy up is Alex Kerfoot, or your next guy up is Ilya Mikheyev or Michael Bunting. It's just a lot of chances. And to me, at the moment, the way they've been performing, the guys that the Vancouver Canucks have brought in aren't necessarily performing to the standards. They're a little bit of a bust at the moment. I'm not saying by the end of the year they're going to be a bust, but the way they've been playing so far, it hasn't worked out. And not only is it affecting the bottom six, but is now affecting the top six.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even take into consideration the defense does not look great, other than Quinn Hughes. That defense is not fantastic.
It's a very expensive defense, by the way.
Yeah, it's not cheap. And I think not having only 4 games of Travis Hamonic after signing him to a 2-year deal threw a wrench in Travis Green and Jim Benning's plans. But still, I just can't see how you didn't know it was going to be an issue personally. Like you would know, like, and this isn't, I'm not saying it's Travis Hamonic's fault. I'm saying, okay, sign Travis Hamonic, but you also have to come in with some type of plan, knowing that, you know what, he did sit out the bubble.
Yeah.
He sat out the bubble, and there's extremely legitimate reasons for him to have concerns. You have to have a backup plan, knowing that, you know what, there's a chance that this might become an issue down the line. And I don't necessarily think they did that.
It is. And I think Dom also said it in his article as well, is listen, like Travis Green is doing what he can with what he was given. And the unfortunate thing is that's probably going to be the first move, is Green is going to go before Jim Benning.
Isn't that like the definition of his tenure in Vancouver? He's just done what he was given.
Yeah.
It's been an issue in years past. Like and I don't know if you'd agree, but I think his run to the second round and taking Vegas to 7 games was a bit of an overachievement.
It's a bit of an anomaly, yeah.
A bit of an anomaly. And I think they said, you know what, look at what Travis Green did here. And then they kind of made moves pretending like they were a contender. And I think that's where it backfired. I want to shift, because you brought them up, I want to shift the conversation to Benning and Green, because there's obviously the rumors that they're going to stick with patience, and patience is key. And, we're not going to make any irrational moves. You said that obviously Travis Green is going to be the first domino to go, because that's usually what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect that to happen now, or do you expect that to happen at the end of the year?
It's hard for me to grasp in a way what might actually happen, because I think things are worse than they were last year. Because I think last year you still had that idea of, okay, they could probably bounce back and try to make another unexpected run. Mm-hmm. But I think that this year the expectations are a lot higher, because you want to bounce back from that tough season. And, it's a bit further back now, that idea of, hey, we almost went all the way, or we almost had a long run. I think now it's just kind of showing that, all right, we actually did not have it going last year and it's bad. And now this year, it's more of, is this really going to continue? Are we really going to go through this again after all the tough things that we've done? Are we potentially going to give up another lottery pick for this team? And because of that, and I'm not saying again, it's not Travis Green's fault, but because of that, a move I could see happening midseason, or I could see happening in 10 games if this pattern continues.
I'd probably agree. Do I think I think Travis Green has made this team look probably better than it is. I think this is all a byproduct of this is what he was given, as you said. I just think I really think a lot of this comes down to the personnel that Travis Green was given. And to me, that lies on Jim Benning.
Yeah. And there's too many shifting things there.
Yeah. I think he's probably the guy to go. He should be the guy to go. And whether that happens now or at the end of the season or at all, I believe I want to propose this to you. Adam Wilde brought this up on the SDP. He says that the Vancouver Canucks should fire Jim Benning now and let Jim Rutherford ride out the season.
Your thing is, okay, that's okay. I'm going to give Adam Wilde respect because that's the logical thing that would happen. But you know that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? That's the logical thing. Okay. My prediction is they're going to hold out hope until they're mathematically out of the playoffs, out of playoff contention, and then they're going to clean house.
But the question is, will Jim Benning come out and say that that Travis Green is his coach and then fire him 10 days later? Because the Ottawa Senators did that too. Yeah,
I think that's perfect. That is a Jim Benning thing to do.
Yeah, no, it's not great. That is probably what's going to happen. I think to place it on Travis Green, I think everyone has to take blame here because at the end of the day, the team isn't performing, which I believe is a responsibility of the coach. And the players who are supposed to perform aren't performing, which is on the players. But at the end of the day, the man or the team that put this together includes Jim Benning, and he runs the show. And it's he hasn't done, there's not a lot to show for Jim Benning's tenure in Vancouver, in my opinion. He had that run for 2 rounds. I believe he made the playoffs once before that. Other than that, there's not a lot of success to show for Jim Benning's tenure, other than great, he traded for JT Miller.
Yeah, if this is truly the end of Jim Benning's tenure, I'd like to just call it. At first, if it wasn't for last season, I would have called it a mixed bag, because I remember when he came in and I did not know what he was doing. He was trading picks everywhere, even though this team was aging. And then he finally got the young talent, and then he still kept throwing money around. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do, because you know what I mean? We've said it before, but you were almost out of this cap crunch. You were almost out. You just have to do what did you trade for this season? You're not competing.
You traded for just under 10% of the cap going to be tied up to Oliver Ekman-Larsson for years to come. And
which is tough.
And to add on to what else Jim Benning has done. Yes, he has also drafted Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson. I should add that. Yeah. Those were 3 pretty good things overall that he's done. But the way business usually works is you have to weigh the pros and cons. And in this case, I think the cons heavily outweigh the pros.
There's one con that it's, I know hindsight's 2020, but it's just one con that I thought of is 2014. He drafted Jared McCann, one pick before David Pasternak. And I know, okay, like hindsight's 20. A lot of teams passed on David Pasternak.
Yes.
But the one thing that bothered me is Jared McCann was actually developing and a guy that they needed. And then they traded him when he was, 21 for Eric Branson.
Yeah, no. I don't know what to say to that because that's kind of inexcusable a little bit.
Just one example I have. I know that, the Pasternak, you never know, but.
Yeah. Don't forget Jim Benning. If he does get fired, I am sure someone will hire him.
Yeah,
because it's just a rotating door in this league. So I'm sure he will find a job. This is not the last you'll hear of the Vancouver Canucks from us. I'm sure if things get worse, you will most definitely hear us be talking about this. And if they get better, we're not going to do Montreal. We're going to wait for Adam because there's quite a bit of stuff we want to talk about. We will get to the Leafs though, because they made an interesting decision and a couple of things happened to some former Leafs. We'll start with that. Leo Komarov, Uncle Leo, is headed to the KHL. I believe he was put on waivers a couple of days ago for termination. And of course, he will be going to St. Petersburg. That's where all the money is. To start, I think Leo Komarov's tenure, it's a habit. Leo Komarov's tenure in Toronto was interesting because he was here for the dark days. Like past 2013, that game that didn't happen. I don't know what that happened that day, but those were some dark days. And he also got to experience some good ones too. Like, I think he was one of those guys everybody loved, whether you were was he an analytical darling? No, but I just think he had the personality that whether you were pro analytics or you were eye test, like you just love the guy. Yeah.
I'm going to miss him. I really did love him in Toronto. I think that when you mentioned those dark days, he was one of those, it's a bit of a stretch, but the key personalities that the Leafs had that I just remember when he was placed on the first line and he made the All-Star team. I think that's just one example where that's funny, but it's also a great memory.
Noted All-Star Leo Komarov. He will always have that he was an All-Star
for the Leafs.
For the Leafs forever. He will always have that. We have another guy. This guy, he is retiring though. Not finally. Like he hasn't been in the league.
He was a free agent the last 2 years, I believe.
Yeah, Dion Phaneuf. Captain Dion Phaneuf has retired. Mixed feelings.
It's weird to me. I remember when he came in, I was so excited. I just remember at school, people doubted me.
Yeah.
Before my early journalism years, like this was like in elementary school, but I just remember people doubted me and they said that I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't know the Leafs or I don't watch enough hockey. But when everyone was like, okay, we got Phil Kessel, we got Dion Phaneuf. Yeah. We're contenders. And I'm just, I don't know kind of thing. And then
you called it, you had it. All those people, I expect written apologies if they're listening because they did not have it. Okay. I watched those games. They did not have it. I was like 10 or 11 and 12 years old, but I remember they did not have it. I expect written apologies. You can call them out on the podcast.
It's okay. Apologies. But again, I don't want to start with that, but I think with Dion Phaneuf, I think that, and this is one thing I've mentioned a lot before. I think a great guy. He's a really great guy. Yeah. And he played a ton of hockey. When he was in the World Juniors, he played for the Flames those early years. I think that he just adjusted so well to the type of player he wanted to be. I remember at the draft, he always said that he wanted to model his game after Scott Stevens. And it was there. I think it's just coming to Toronto. I like that he came to Toronto. I thought that was a really good move. They didn't really give up a lot for him. And I think it's just, you shouldn't have made him captain. You shouldn't have put that amount of scrutiny on him so early. And I think the combination of the fact that he was still trying to rediscover his game in Toronto, that was the main reason why Calgary traded him, is there was a bit of a decline in what they were seeing from previous seasons. And I think I think that the one thing I have about Fanuff is that he was a consistent player, no matter what people said. He was really consistent. It's just when he did make a mistake, it was just really noticeable.
Yeah, because he was a captain and because he was a defenseman in Toronto.
Yeah.
Like if you look in recent years, the guy, other than Mitch Marner, unfortunately, the guys who get ragged on the most are defensemen. Like before Mitch Marner, it was Cody Ceci. Before Cody Ceci, it was Jake Gardner. Before Jake Gardner, it was Dion Phaneuf. Like, and I'm sure we can keep going back. I'm just for the sake of it, I'm not. But I just think it was kind of unfortunate. And once he got that monster of a contract, where you know what, it would have ended last year.
Yeah.
By the way, if it had went its duration and hadn't been bought out, it would have ended last year, which is crazy to think about.
It's funny. His time in Toronto really kind of reminds me of how the Canucks are right now. Like they don't really know what they are. They're giving people all this money, yeah. But it's like, what are you really building here?
That is a great question. They weren't. I don't know what they were building. It was Frederic Gauthier being drafted in 2013, first round.
But again, like I know, like I'm just saying all these things. Like, oh yeah, there was that era for the Leafs, but honestly, Phaneuf did what he needed to do, and I know he played for other teams, but it's just the way he was in Toronto. I think like that was the highest pedestal he had, and I think that he came in with these expectations that he just could not fill. That he came in when people still had those World Junior memories of him, or they still had the idea of. Do you remember the double Dion? Like you remember that, and then it just. I remember Cabby had the Dion Phaneuf segment on the Score. Yeah. Just all this stuff where he came in. You came in thinking that you got a number one defenseman. You got a guy that's gonna stabilize everything. And what I like about it, he never complained. He wasn't like when I think like him and John Tavares are kind of very similar. Like John Tavares is a bit more talkative, but I think Dion Phaneuf is just a bit like he held the media. He dealt with the media really well. We don't know what goes on after, but I don't know. I just don't want to be on the side where I say that he was a bad captain and we have to forget that he played on the Leafs, because I don't want to be in that boat.
No, man, I think he was a really good guy. And I think they also CJ reported a couple hours ago that he would like to be part of the organization moving forward, whether that's right now or in a few years that's what it is. He would like to be part of the organization, and I wouldn't necessarily hate it either. Like he's a good guy. It's just he played in Toronto where expectations are always extremely high. He made a lot of money. Like look, I think with guys in Toronto, if they make a lot of money and for whatever reason, they get scrutinized beyond belief. You said the media thing there, not directly media, but he was the captain during Salute-gate, which was a huge deal in Toronto. I understand why it's a huge deal in Toronto. At the time, I think I was like 14. So to me, I didn't really care. I understand why they did it. I also, if I was them, I'd be like, yeah, no, man, like screw you guys. Like I get you pay to come see me, but like you guys treat me like crap. So like this is a two-way street. That's my opinion, but whatever. Yeah.
He was at an era where, and I don't know if I'm wrong with this, but it was an era when people love to hate the Leafs. And I'm not saying it's not like there right now, but I'm like, they're at least winning.
It is always popular to hate the Leafs.
It's always popular, but I think I think at the time it was just like that personality thing where it's that small inkling, that you have to stay like this because they're losing. But now I think it's just kind of you love to hate them because they're winning.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a clip of Sid when he was doing Tim and Sid. It was just after John Tavares joined. They played a preseason game in Lucan, Ontario. And John Tavares, I think, had a goal or two, and he looked really good. And the reaction from Leafs fans was ecstatic. And planned a parade, and he's like, do Leaf fans understand that they're the butt of the, like, they're always going to be the butt end of the joke? And I took it so personally because I'm like, yeah, man, I know. And then I go on Twitter and I'm like, man, there are people who don't know that, that we are the butt of end of the joke. Always. Like, we will always be until they win a cup. Even after they win a cup, hopefully, I think they'll just continuously be it. And I'm fine with that. I take it like a champ. But yeah, you reminded me of that.
Yeah, honestly, if they win, like the Leafs, like I kind of feel that when they win a cup, people are still going to be like, oh, yeah, but you didn't go back to back, or you didn't win 3 in 5 years.
That's okay. I'll survive. I will survive one. Hopefully I live to see a single cup win by this team. So 2 things with the Leafs before we end the podcast. They made a trade.
Yes, they did.
They traded again for Kyle Clifford.
He's back.
He's back. But they traded future considerations, which means, I don't know. Do you know much about future considerations?
I've actually tried to ask people about what becomes future considerations, because I remember a lot of older trades I've read that they actually end up becoming like a low level pick or something. But sometimes I just kind of feel like maybe it's an organizational thing. Like we've brought up semi-pro so many times.
Yeah, maybe they're gonna trade a dishwasher or something, whatever they need,
or I don't know, like just like something like a photocopier or something like that. We don't know, but
exactly.
I think I'm a bit. This is when we laugh about like the Leafs, the butt end of the joke, but like the over analysis. When the guy has the head thing going like that, and then he's just looking at all the papers.
Yeah, I
remember Steve Dangle had a tweet about. It's like when I announced the Leafs making a depth move. And this is how I kind of feel about Kyle Clifford is I think when he came from LA with Jack Campbell, I really liked that move because I think that was a need that the Leafs wanted to get. And he was just from what I've heard, like a good locker room guy. So that was a positive for me. The second thing is, I don't know, like towards the end when he was becoming a free agent, like it just didn't seem like there was that much interest in wanting to come back. And I think he just comes back to a different team where it's a bit repetitive to have him now because there's Wayne Simmons and there's Nick Ritchie.
Wow, you're including Nick Ritchie in that, which does not make me feel good considering the contract, but also Curtis Gabriel.
And Curtis Gabriel, yes.
Playing in the
with a K.
AHL.
Curtis with a K.
Curtis with a K. I don't want to overanalyze it. Obviously, he's starting in the AHL, and the Keefe quote, Keefe had a quote saying, he'll spend some time there because I think he was out with COVID. And he'll probably find his way back into the NHL lineup. First off, he makes $1 million and he passed through waivers. So I believe that means he can be moved up and down for a certain period of time. He can be completely buriable. So the salary to me is completely irrelevant. I think, again, I don't know really what he offers other than the locker room intangibles. Yes, he can throw a hit. He can beat the crap out of somebody, I guess. It's just other than that, I don't know. You're right. Like, I think it's just another guy like Wayne Simmons, another guy like Curtis Gabriel. We'll see what comes of it. Like, I'm not going to overreact to this trade and be like, wow, I can't believe they brought back Kyle Clifford. Like, that's like the best move they could have ever made. I think Kyle Dubas should win GM of the year. Like, no, I can't do it because it seems so minimal right now. Like, who the hell knows?
We're not going to let Twitter win.
We're going to let Twitter win. Listen, the chances are if he plays with the Leafs, he's probably going to play on the fourth line. And my guess is if he's going to replace anybody, he's going to replace Wayne Simmons.
Yeah.
I just don't see what the kerfuffle is on both sides. I saw someone tweeting, well, I can't believe they brought him back. He didn't even want to be here after he came. I'm like, he has a year left. It was future considerations, and he might not even play for the Leafs. Why are we so upset about this?
You know why? Because it's the whole thing of not being able to win the argument. It's because what I said before, he came in when people are like, yeah, we need toughness. We need the Leafs to get this. And then when the Leafs finally balanced out quite a few things, it's too much now. Like, oh, they're not adapting to the modern NHL. He's not going to get a goal for you.
It's so tiring. It's so tiring. I don't want to have this conversation again. I don't. I'm done. You know what? You know what the Leafs need? The Leafs need for the core to be tough. That's what they need. No one's talking about that. Everyone's talking about how they need more toughness, but no one's specifically saying that the core four needs to be tough. That needs to be talked about.
Honestly, I think Austin Matthews, you know, when he did the whole thing, he's like, what did I do? Bit where he was like just laughing against the Jets.
Against
the Jets, the
Canadians.
Ben Sherrod. It's just, you know, he knows what to do. He takes it in stride.
Looking back on that, though, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah,
maybe because of how the series ended and like the effect it had on a good chunk of the fan base. But like, I look back on that, I'm like, man, you couldn't have just done something.
Only if they had Kyle Clifford.
Yeah. Oh man. You know what? Yeah. Kyle Clifford's here, guys. Like as if Wayne Simmons didn't exist on that team, but whatever. That's fine. They played Nashville last night. They won 3-0.
Close goals, by the way, like so many calls.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I did miss the third period. I was watching the Canada game and I want to bring that up at the end. I want to shout those guys out. They're killing it. They're 2 points back from first place in the Atlantic. Again, it's hard for me to make claims in November when the real challenge will be in April and May, or well, let's make it to May 1st in April. Like that's when I'll be like, you know what? This team has changed. Because there's nothing they can do personally in the in the regular season to truly tell me that they've changed. They can do the first half of the season. The first part of the season, they kind of crumbled and then they had to build themselves back up, which is great. But they've done that how many years in a row?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's all about taking it in stride and looking at it one game at a time. I think the positives I get out of this is for the preview for this game. This is a Nashville team that I guess is performing a bit better than our expectations. We really thought they were just kind of going to bottom out again or not be consistent as they were, but they figured things out a bit. I think Jeff O'Neill spoke about it, and his surprise player this year has been Matt Duchene. And I think he hasn't really become that top line center kind of guy where he's back to being elite. But I think there was some understanding in his game, especially in the offseason, that improvements had to be made, that he didn't want to be that guy that was washed by the time he's 29, 30, and he has a giant contract. I think he realized that. I think it helped with what Nashville was able to do, even when they did shed salary and gave up role-playing guys. But what I said before, like as a small market team, they're holding it together.
Yeah, they are third in the division. The team behind them, St. Louis, does have a game in hand, but still, they're currently third in the division, 19 points. Matt Duchene, 16 points in 16 games. He has 9 goals. They have 3 guys, by the way, who are point per player.
Did he get like 9 goals last year? I know I'm not being like,
I will double check.
I just actually I'm thinking
I would not. I'm going to double check. Okay, guess how many goals he had last year?
12, 11, 10, 8, 7,
No,
15.
he had 6 goals.
Oh
And
my
in
God.
34 games, he had 6 goals.
Wow.
In even the year before, he had 13 goals in 66 games. He is 4 goals away from that, and we haven't even hit the 20 game mark.
Wow. Is he back? Question mark.
I don't know, but the last full season we had, like proper full season, he did have 70 points in 73 games.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he did not look good in 1920. He looked okay, but not $8 million worthy, which was his first season. I'm not saying he's back, but it's good to see Matthew Shane at least being a point per game for now, because making $8 million, I kind of think that's the bare minimum.
Yeah. And, this is actually his first good stretch in Nashville.
Yes, that is true. Like, no, that is very, very true. That is his first good stretch with Nashville. I don't have anything else on the Leafs. Do you have anything else on the Leafs?
I just liked that the way they played was what we said, the momentum going, that they kept going to the net. UC Saros really had to play lights out to keep it at 3-0. And I think the Preds just ran out of depth, that they don't have the depth to keep up with the Leafs, especially when the Leafs are on their game. Yeah. That, this is one of those games where you have everything together and you expect a type of win like this. Exactly. One last thing. I really want to see David Riddick play, but that's okay.
I forgot he was on Nashville. That is fine. Before we end the episode, I want to shout out the Canadiens men soccer team, who currently sit first in CONCACAF World Cup qualifying. There is a very good chance, and I'm knocking on wood, there's a very good chance that they could make the 2022 World Cup, which is going to be in Qatar next winter.
That's huge.
Late fall, which would be huge considering, they're hosting it in like 5 years.
Yeah.
But man, I was watching it last night. I'm like, it was just so good to see a Canadian soccer players play so well. I have to bring this point up. Christian Jack, right?
Yeah.
He was on TSN. He made a point at the end of the game. He goes, a lot of in North America, it's all about the individual players, but the way those guys played out there was like a team. And that felt like the most damn hockey thing he could have said. And I'm like, that is the most Canadian thing Christian Jack said about this team, is that they play it as a team, not as individuals. And that really is right. And they're going to finish the year, because their next games aren't until 2022, but they're going to finish the year atop of the table for qualifying, and they're going to finish the year with the most goals scored by a country worldwide. They're going to finish. I think that's incredible. I just wanted to shout them out. Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, just great guys.
Once I say, we've said it before already. We already know it's a heritage moment, but the celebration into the snow, I
loved it. I
love it as well, because
it was
that whole 10. Yeah, that whole time before the game, I remember Gene Principe was with Tim McAuliffe, and they've mentioned too, just you're going to be playing soccer in a really cold stadium. What are you going to do with the snow? And it just all worked out so well for that story.
They did. They left it there on purpose. That is it. Unless you have something else. I didn't see anything on Twitter when I checked.
We do one more Twitter check, and I think we should be okay.
I didn't see anything.
How Jim saved Jim's, and how John Krasinski saved Jim and Pam's relationship, but that's something unrelated.
Because you're more of a baseball guy than I am, will Robbie Ray win the Cy Young?
He did win that, right?
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he won.
What?
I think so.
Oh, I didn't know. Oh, man. Okay. Sorry. I did not. I saw them talking about it today. And I did not know the awards happened. I apologize.
Yes,
so I
he
guess
is.
he won.
He is.
Okay.
Congrats. He's the fourth
Silly
Cy
me.
Young Award winner in franchise history. He's the last one since Roy Halladay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The last Blue Jay to be nominated for the top, I guess, pitching award in the American League was David Price in 2015.
Okay.
And the coincidence there is when Price was nominated and Robbie Ray won, they are both free agents. So, Robbie Ray, please come back if you're listening to this.
I was going to ask you, that was going to be my follow-up question. Will they re-sign Robbie Ray?
You know, this is not a baseball podcast, but I have mixed feelings about it.
Okay. That's
Yes.
we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the 211 podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure you share it, obviously. And if you can rate it, please do. I know you can rate it at least on Apple Podcasts. So please do that. And make sure, if you haven't already, to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. All the links and accounts are in the description down below. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Voice Ed, your work for CJRU and Adam's YouTube channel.
Yeah.
That is everything.
We'll see you guys on Sunday with Adam and our hockey cards.
Exactly. Goodbye.
Bye.